Freedom Fighters, I'm coming back at you with another Friday weekly news wrap up. We got a lot of stuff to cover this week. We got the Epstein files got voted on to be released, and Trump signed that. So Pam has up to 30 days for the DOJ to release the files, and supposedly they're supposed to be unredacted, or she has the um, discretionary matters to, I think, um, do some of it. But we'll get into that further. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about this week. I wanted to get into this. I wanted to talk about this video of several leftist senators and Democrat reps and congressmen and women calling upon, quote unquote, the military and intelligence agencies not to follow orders. Now, I'm pretty sure, I've talked about several times during, Trump's first term, how they were running full-page articles in the Washington Post and New York Times, and I think it was in the Atlantic, and I was seeing it all over the place. I mean, these news organizations were running stuff 24/7, talking about how they weren't following orders and they weren't giving him his briefings and all this stuff. I think I remember seeing it on Yahoo News and all these different leftist tabloid rags were basically out there just openly admitting to their crimes, bragging how, they're not doing what the president is saying, they're not giving him his intel briefings, all this stuff. And back then, I was saying, what the heck is going on? At this point, of trust the plan. And talking about the plan, X-22 is back. I put a post up on that. I mean, this guy, Dave, is king of the Q-tard psyop. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't him. Because he just sticks to it, and it's almost like nobody can be this hardcore, die-hard believer of this slop unless they're the one producing it. And because, no one can be strung around except for straight, like boomers who are living in oblivious land, or just straight low IQ retards. Are the only people who are still following this plot of, the military's in control, the patriots are in control, and everything's getting taken care of, and it's all going part of the plan. And I can't remember back when they were writing these articles if who was in. I mean, sessions only lasted a week or two, and then they put in interim AG Whitaker. And I remember back then the plan was the special interim AGs have special powers, and they can do whatever they want, and they don't have to go through the congressional hearings, and he can run a special investigation and blah blah blah. And it didn't happen. And then he got Bill Barr, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty much game over. Ain't nothing gonna happen. And they were talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna impeach him, and we're basically gonna stall out his presidency and get him wrapped up in the lawfare and all that. And they were they were openly bragging and broadcasting their plans and their open treason and sedition. They were openly saying it. So here they are telling the agencies to not follow. And this is a key point. They're telling the CIA, and one of these ladies was a former CIA officer, agent, and there is no such thing as former, so she was telling the intelligence agencies. And you remember Schumer was on the, I can't remember what organization he did, but he was giving an interview on CNN or, one of these things, and he's like, the deep state's going to get this guy. Or he specifically said the intelligence agencies, and he's like, they got 7 ways till Sunday to get them, and the whole, their whole argument of no kings, and Trump's a dictator and a fascist, and he's the next H man, the mustache man, and we have to resist and all this stuff to defend the Constitution. It's laughable when these clowns bring up the Constitution and this, all this no kings, yet they're the ones pushing and supporting all the gun control. That's why from the very beginning, when this no kings thing was started, and you had Schumer and all these, politicians pushing this, I'm like, you literally want to take guns from people. Like, you are doing literally what King George did. You are the redcoat tyrant. You got this Mark Kelly motherfucker, man. I hate this. You know this guy. He's the astronaut, husband to Gabby Giffords that runs the Giffords Gun Control Group, and he'll sit there and talk about defending the Constitution, yet he goes after the guns all the time. And he uses the old "I'm a gun owner," FUD bullshit, and constantly, counts his military service. And, once again, I've talked about the vets. I've done several videos on the military, and, just being a veteran isn't a blanket statement of, applause and support, right? And I talked about before how Pete Buttigieg is a veteran. Hunter Biden is a veteran. So when someone just comes out and they're like, the left is already coming out and saying, oh, you got to support, these are veterans and these are people who serve the country. That doesn't mean anything when they're, bred CIA agents and groomed infiltrators and people against the Republic. And I don't, want to hear about how they can't be criticized, or, it's the same thing when I've talked before about judges, and they're like, oh, the honorable judge so-and-so. Well, what did they do that was so honorable? Are they upholding civil liberties and rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution, or are they upholding the illegal, unconstitutional laws against the Constitution in their court and sending people to prison for exercising their rights? And then you call them honorable. So it's the same thing with these vets. Their vet in service doesn't mean anything to me. And, talking about vets, another thing was, did you see that post about Garantham, where he's like, this is, if you get invaded, they're going to find out we're a culture of extreme violence. And, people were calling him out, like, man, look at all the stuff we've gone through. Everything, all the unconstitutional laws that we go through, the very rifle he's holding in his hand in that video, and his armor, and 30-round mags and suppressors, and I don't know if it was full auto or not, but it's all taxed and stamped, and licensing, and asking permission from government. Like, you're not a free American. And to act like, oh, we uphold, the founding fathers would have been shooting already. And I agree with you. We were a country of extreme violence, and we put down our foot. We drew the the line in the sand, and we got down to business. That's no longer our country. And I've been saying that for a long time. I did a video once called Behind a Blade of Grass. And it goes to that saying, where they're always like, oh, you could never invade America. You could never do this in America. Whenever something happens in China or the UK, someone gets arrested for a meme or something. Well, you could never do this in America because, we got guns and we don't allow that shit. Well, we seem to allow all of it. I haven't seen anyone pick up a gun and do anything in a long time, except for leftists. Like I always say, man, um, there's a lot of people trashing on Antifa and these people, and I've often gave them credit where I'm like, I don't agree with what you're fighting for in your ideology, but it seems like you're willing to actually fight for it. You actually believe in it. The right just puts out these memes and these talking points, and it always comes from these I've talked over and over about these gun tubers, and again, they'll talk about their two tours, in Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever, or their four tours, five, whatever, and they're a Marine, Black Ops, Navy SEAL, and they ran so and so, and oh, I've got a 1 MOA at 500 yards, and they'll complain about the tyranny and whine about it, just like I'm doing, but they're actually capable. And people like me are looking up. I used to look up to these people. And then a lot of these people, I lost the respect for a lot of, men that I used to look up to. But, I also saw, there's still vets I respect. And, for the most part, I know most of them mean good. And there's two different kind of vets, right? I know there are people who join who genuinely still have a sense of, great patriotism, and they love their country. But there's also a large swath of people that are just like, they just want to go to college, right? And they want a retirement. They want benefits when they get out and all that. But on a good note, I did see a tweet of a vet who said, hey, about not following orders, I refused the orders to take an experimental poke, and I lost my job. And the premise isn't necessarily wrong, right? The merit is correct. I've talked about not following orders for a long time. And, there's a saying, doing the right thing won't always be legal. And you will be punished, for doing the right thing sometimes. And at this point, it's just so be it, right? What I always say, get right with God. Because at the end of the day, they're going to kill you for being a free American. That's what it's coming down to. And, as far as resisting, lockdowns, forced medical procedures, fund confiscation, all that, of course, going against unconstitutional orders is fine, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about, your actual rights, your freedoms. I just talked about, the four boxes. The left is always coming after the first most important is what I always talk about. If you can't use that soapbox, then immediately, like, you're already headed to the cartridge box. And that's what the Second Amendment's there for. And they're constantly doing that along with all the other myriad of, rights. The Fourth Amendment constantly violated, with all the stuff. But no, because, you can't cut your genitals off and, troon rights. They're willing to upstage a coup and call for, resistance and disorder and not following orders. It's ridiculous. And then finally, we got a pulse out of Trump. And last night I saw that he posted sedition is punishable by death, and then retruth the guy who said, these people need to be hung. And George Washington would have hung these people. And he's absolutely correct. And again, I've talked about this, JFK. If you don't allow a peaceful revolution, a violent one is inevitable. And I've been looking around. I've always said, like, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. It looks like they're leaving it up to us, to we the people. But, Trump, at least, put this out there, and Dan, Pam, Cash, they need to get off their ass and get it done. And again, it's not, calling or inciting or telling anyone to do any illegal or lawful behavior. This is under the law. This is the code of sedition and the penalties for treason against the United States of America. And these people need to be held to account. And if they aren't, then it's going to be left, they're going to basically leave us no choice. At some point, they're going to leave it up to we the people. So, Pam and the crew need to get off their ass and realize what's coming. And what I said for a long time, I'm like, these people don't know what we want, right? And you got Pete Hegseth here, big old tough guy, Secretary of War now, out here always, doing pull-ups and push-ups and running around with the troops and giving speeches to the military and trying to recruit, military. But he responded to this video as stage 4 TDS. And it's like, this is all, man, it's all just memes and jokes at this point. No, it's not TDS, Pete. It's full-on sedition. And what are you going to do about it? And I know this isn't his department, but, Pam is the one. I'm looking at Cash and Pam. Round them up. Start sending people, out. Round these people up. Oh, no, but the optics. And people are going to look. Did you see these white liberal Karens and crying over the ICE raids? And I talked about Joe Rogan before. Oh, you got to have a heart. And, and they're out there in Charlotte, Tennessee, North Carolina, and they're out there blocking the schools and holding secret classroom meetings where they're helping the illegals. They're doing car rides, bringing the illegals into the back door of the school, and they're aiding and abetting in the invasion. And, again, what are you guys going to do about it? And, Dan is constantly posting about, public corruption is going to get dealt with and we're not going to, accept it all. It's time to get serious. And I don't think what the American populace is feeling and what we want. Like I said, 10, 15 years ago, I wanted these people jailed. We're done with it now. We want heads on pikes. We want people dangling from the rope. And again, it's not like some kind of bloodlust, like we just want to go to war and we want to do it. This is in the code of law. This is the law. You have betrayed and you are a traitor to the republic. They need to be held accountable under law. And again, if that doesn't happen, then I fear the worst. And then it will just be an all-out, assault, and the America will probably just collapse from within. And that's kind of something I've talked about before too. It's getting late here. I'm probably just going to finish it up. I didn't really get to talk about the Epstein thing, but I talked about it before. Honestly, I think it's theater. We'll see what actually comes out. I'm going to say it's going to be more nothing burgers. Didn't Cash even come out and say there was like no videos or there was no black book, there was no list of names and all that? They're never going to list implicating figures and all this. And this whole thing of Mike Johnson coming out and saying, you know, this is a matter of national security, and he's nervous about, this is all part of the theater to make you think like, oh, like this is it. This is going to shake up Washington and this is going to bring the system crumbling down. They'll never let anything like that brings the system down to that level. They'll never let that out. That's not coming out. So don't expect anything, man. And until the next one, you know what it is, man. We are on our own. Nobody's coming to save us. So get right with God, because only God can save you. Freedom fighters out.